Well, thank you for the birthday gifts.
Yeah.
If something went wrong in the edit, you brought me birthday gifts. You brought me amazing merchandise, Avril. You flattered me with the beer and the pizza here, which you kind of had to earn favor back here because the last time you were here, you kind of crashed the party. You weren't necessarily invited, Avril, and so you decided to crash the party. And help yourself to some wine backstage at K-Rock, and then proceed to drop an F-bomb on national radio.
What else is new?
That's called a re-entry. Welcome back. This is fantastic.
Thank you. It's so good to see you.
There's so much I want to talk to you about. I guess let's start. I want to talk about Bite Me, but then let's go in chronological order just for a second because there is so much to talk about from back then to now. You brought me the Canadian beer. I read an incredible stat, and I know I'm far more of a chart geek and a stat geek than probably you ever are, but your debut album, which is going to turn 20 next year, we'll talk all about it, is the best-selling record by a Canadian artist in the 21st century, which you might go, oh, Canada, whatever. That's a country that is home to Justin Bieber, The Weeknd, Shawn Mendes, and a guy named Drake, and let alone your debut album is the best-selling record of the 21st century. I mean, that is pretty incredible.
That's crazy. That's so gnarly. Like, I remember I was so young. Like, I was 16 when I wrote that record, 17 when I put out my first single, Complicated, then Skater Boy, and all that took off. And it took off right away. I had, like, no idea what I was even doing. I just knew that I loved music. Like, I didn't even really totally get it. Like, when I went to Hollywood to, like, write, I was like, oh, Hollywood. Like, I didn't, like, live at home in Canada, like, growing up being like, I want to go to Hollywood. I want to make it. It was just like, I just want to sing, you know? And it all kind of, like, happened. And, yeah, that whole, like, album cycle was, like, super special. But, like, when I was super young, 17, my manager kept coming up to me and telling me stats and stuff. And I never know them, and I still don't. And she'd be like, you realize, like, your record's #1. And she'd be like looking at me like this, and I'd be like, cool. Yeah.
Do you
all I know, it would register more to me when, like, I would hear myself on the radio. Like, that was, like, huge. And it still is, like, to this day. Like, if I'm in the car and I hear myself on the radio, I'm like, I made it.
It's so cool.
Or if, like, I win an award or something, that's when I feel it.
Do you think that actually helped you? You know, because you think about it, you were so tied to the numbers and you had to follow up Let Go, and you know, you had to follow up the second record, and you had to follow up Girlfriend. Like, if you were so preoccupied with that, the commercial viability of it all, right? Which you continued. I mean, the longevity is, like, you know, it goes without saying with you. Do you think that actually helped you?
I think it was, like, weirdly kind of pure and, like, innocent. Like, I didn't even, like, I didn't know what a lot of it meant. Like, I was 15 when I went to New York, and, like writing and, like, singing for people, and, like, LA rediscovered me and, like, signed me, and, like, it sounds kind of crazy, but, like, I kind of didn't even know what a record deal was, or, like, a publishing deal, and, like, all these terms were getting thrown around, and I was just like a girl with a guitar, and I started, like, writing, and I'd been singing since I was a child, and it was just very, like, natural. I mean, like, I feel like obviously it was, like, meant to happen. I've worked very hard and all that, but it was like there was just this, like, love and passion for it, and I just, like, wanted it really bad, but I feel like it was, like, supposed to happen. And so, yeah, I didn't know a lot that was going on around me at the time because I was so young, and I was really just focused on, like, getting up on stage and playing guitar, or sitting in my hotel room with a guitar writing songs, and I kind of just lived in my own world.
And you stayed focused.
Yeah.
So you start singing, you know, country, and, you know, it's well publicized. You know, you win this contest and you perform with Shania Twain, but then when you get to the time of making your first record, you're very adamant about it sounding like a rock record, having a band. And so where does the love of rock, like, where do you go from, you know, the country and the pop lane to the love of rock, the affinity for that sound?
So when I started singing, like, I don't know if it was, like, 5 or 7 or what, but, like, I went to church and every Sunday, and that's where I started singing. Is, like, my mom had, like, mentioned to the church, like, choir director, like, that I sing, and she'd love to get me up on stage. So they, like, finally, like, years later, because they were like, she's too young, and then finally they allowed me to sing in the adult cantata, Christmas cantata, and I sang, and everyone was like, oh my gosh, she can sing. So then they just, like, continued having me sing at, like, different Christmas concerts in the church. And so that's where, like, that started. Then that's where I really started, was in church. And then the next step for me was like performing at fairs and like banquets and whatnot around town. And it was like country fairs and stuff. And like, I actually like country music. Like I'd come home and watch music videos after school. And that's like one of my favorite things to do. And I'd watch CMT, or I'd watch, in Canada, it's called Much Music.
Of course.
And so I would like cover the Dixie Chicks, Faith Hill, Dina Carter. And then I do remember hitting an age when I was around 15. And I was like, I just like don't want to sing like gospel music and country music. And I was like becoming a teenager and like growing into like who I was as a person. And I was getting like a little rebellious. I entered high school. I was wearing baggy clothes. I started like drinking beer and skateboarding. And I had a moment where I was like, these songs aren't cool. Like, I don't want to be singing these. And like, I told my parents, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like that. And that was like, that could have been like a gnarly moment where like I stopped. But what actually happened was that's when I grabbed the guitar and started to write my own songs without even really knowing what I was doing. Like I knew a G chord. My dad had a guitar laying around. And that's when I started writing the songs that are like my songs, my style. And when I got into high school, I was like into bands like Blink-182 and Green Day and NoFX. And like started skateboarding and hanging out with skaters and going to like cool like band high school band events with different bands playing. And that's when it all sort of changed. So when I went from like a young girl, 7, 8, 9, 10, into like turning to like 15, first year of high school.
But I think there's an even bigger story there, because so much of your legacy, right? Like take the hit records aside, is the icon that you were for so many young girls. And here you are as a young girl, a young woman singing, Dixie Chicks and predominantly country songs, because you probably saw yourself in those people. Because there weren't any sort of icons in the world of pop punk or rock music that you saw yourself in as a teenage girl. And so you almost had no choice but to sing those songs, because what else would you have sung? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then lo and behold, ironically enough, right, like 5 years later, you become that image, you become that idol, you become that icon for a generation of young women.
Yeah. And like, I still love country music to this day. And yeah, but like when I like could finally like was old enough to like have a choice, like I was like loving rock and roll, but I'm just like a music lover and I love all different styles. And then I think once I, got into high school, it was like, okay, yeah, like pop punk bands and like wearing my guitar like super low and like going to like the skate stores, and like now I can like go buy my own clothes and like going to like a West 49 and like getting the big fat skate shoes and like baggy pants. And I still have my West 49 hoodie that I wore in grade 9. I like last month found it in my closet.
So you're a very sentimental person. Because you're
am.
telling me you have this like mirror from your parents' basement,
Yeah,
and then you have this hoodie.
Yeah, I have 2 hoodies. I have a hoodie from high school that says "Skateboarding is not a crime" that I literally still have. And
Dude, that would go for so much on the vintage market. I know what you're talking about. Like that line. Yeah, I think one sold for like $400 the other day. I'm like a big vintage geek, and it's pretty crazy.
Okay, I'm gonna bring it back. This album cycle in my wardrobe.
Dude, yeah, you'll turn some heads.
Should it be in a music video, or should I wear it down a red carpet?
That'll be like I'm not kidding, like in the streetwear,
wear it on, like a TV performance for like the single.
Yeah.
What do you pick?
I will. Let me think on that by the end.
I could wear it with like a tutu or a skirt. Like that'd be so fun.
Something I wanted to ask you about is like when you at the time that you came out, right, and you're a teenage artist and you're a teenage girl, you're basically like put in these 2 boxes, and I'm simplifying it for the sake of this chat, but you're either like a Britney or Christina back then, right?
Yeah.
And when you're a teenager, whether you're an artist or not, I feel most people just want to fit in, right? and most people just want to like do whatever they can to fit in. You're a very interesting artist because you weren't a Britney or Christina, and you also didn't want to fit in. You were very outspoken and seemingly had a lot of creative control on that first record.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you were the one that said, yo, these songs aren't working for me in New York. I'm going to LA. We got to do this my way. Where did that confidence come from? Because I think it's pretty rare when you're that young.
I just like always knew what I liked and what I didn't like. And like I was kind of like a tomboy, and like I wanted to play, you know, more guitar driven rock music. And at the time, as you just mentioned, like the bubblegum pop with the headsets and like the background dancers was like what was like in at the time, and like that definitely wasn't me. So I just had to like voice that. So like I started when L.A. Reid signed me. He did this really, I can't believe I remember this. Like I was 15 sitting in his office, and he, like my mom and I are sitting like on the couch in his office, and we're like in New York City, baller office. And I'm like, hey, and he's like, you have like your own thing going on. Like normally we'd have like stylists and all those people come in and like you'd find your image. He's like, you have your own thing going on, girl, and you just like do what you're doing. And I was like, I had no idea what he meant, but I was like, does this mean I get to keep wearing baggy clothes? Because my parents did like everything to get me out of them. And I was just like, sweet. So, I mean, L.A. Reid really got me. And so like I started making that first record in New York, and that didn't work for me because the person I was working with didn't get me. The person I was writing with was like giving me his songs, and they were just like so cheesy. And I was just like, no. I love Celine Dion, but it was like kind of more of like a ballady, pretty thing. And I was just
And did any of those songs ever wind up like with another artist? Did anyone
no,
ever see the light of day?
I don't even think so. But so then like I came out to LA and I had much better luck, and I met Cliff Magnus, and I met The Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
And like I didn't totally know how to articulate myself, but other than just expressing to them while they were producing, and I'm sitting there staring at the screen and being in the studio for the first time, and I just kept being like, just make it sound more like a band. Just like make it sound more like a band. Like, and it's like more guitars and just like drums. And I just was trying to edge everything up as much as possible. I wanted to rock. And so that was my fight. My fight was to make rock inspired, like lyrically and musically, music. That was just like, I was in an angsty place. When have I not been? And I got to do that. I pushed as hard as I could, and like I think that attitude is definitely there.
So how do you know it's like, you know, is it, how instantaneous is it back then? Because we're talking 2002, like summer 2002 with Complicated, and then eventually Skater Boy, right, a couple months later. And we live now in this like, you know, viral age where things can truly like just pop overnight, and it's crazy and it's ubiquitous. In hindsight, that's what it felt like, right? But how did it feel like for you? Like, do you remember, was there a pinch me moment, or like sort of that cliche, you know, like, oh, this is like massive now with the release of Complicated?
Like when I won my first Moon Man.
Yeah.
Because I saw that, like sitting on my couch at home. I saw like award shows on TV, and I was just like, oh, I want to do that. Like, I hope I get to do that. And then like when I went up on stage and like accepted my first award, I was like, whoa, it happened.
So it was being on stage. It wasn't being on the top of Radio City for the pre-show that year. Do you remember that? You performed up on at the Marquee. So it wasn't there.
That was all blur. No, I was just kidding.
It wasn't until you got on stage.
Did I perform at the award show?
Yeah, you were on top of the Marquee, Avril.
For the award show?
Yeah, for the VMAs. You don't remember this? This is what it's like to be Avril Lavigne.
Like,
you've done so many things. You've accomplished so much.
Oh my God, no, I don't remember.
Really? You have no memory of being on top of the Marquee?
I remember like being on the red carpet, and I remember winning the award.
Right.
For Best New Artist. I performed.
Yeah. Pre-show. On top. We'll send you a clip.
So pre-show.
I'll talk
Is that still the show? Like, I don't even remember.
That's incredible, though.
Yeah. I remember performing at the Grammys, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, like winning my first award, it was like, whoa. And hearing Hearing Complicated on the radio for the first time was a trip.
Where were you?
Well, I was doing a radio promo tour and I had just left the radio station. So it was like, they had to play it. Like, I was like in the car and like we had just left the station. But so it's kind of one of those like, I'm on the radio, Mom. But like, I was just in there. Like, you know what I mean? But then like, I heard myself on the radio a lot. And then that was cool.
So what kind of effect does that have on a 15, 16, 17-year-old where you reach this like, and almost instantaneously, this like cultural ubiquity? Like I was talking today about how there's a month there in 2002 where you're on the cover of 3 different teen magazines. Like it was Teen People, YM, and 17. And then like, we talked, I think before we were rolling about 20 years ago this month, you had the #1 pop single in America, the #1 hot AC single in America, and then actually 2 records in the top 10 of pop. So, I mean, it was like you were everywhere so fast, so soon. But how does, and of course, professionally, you can't wish for a better start. But how were you coping with it personally back then?
I was just really busy and like, there wasn't like social media and I wasn't like going online and seeing things. I was just like actually like really in the present moment in whatever city I was in. So I bet you it's a different experience now for someone who's in the limelight than it was back then.
Did you feel like you could escape it? Like if you weren't watching TV, if you weren't on the radio, if you weren't at the magazine stand, did you feel like you could kind of...
Oh, everywhere I went, everyone knew who I was. Like, because I just like stood out or something. I don't know. And it's always kind of been that way. Like, people like usually recognize me. But at that point, another crazy thing that happened was I had one of my very first shows and there were like fans lined up outside of the venue and they were dressed like me. And I was like, what? They like had the black eyeliner, the straight hair, the white wife beater, the necktie. And I was like, I just remember like, I think it was like the Roxy in Vancouver. And I just remember like being in a window or something and peeking down or looking out. And like, that was a trip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that eventually got to a point I read that you actually wanted to stop wearing the necktie because it felt almost like a costume for you.
I don't know. I don't think I really felt that way. I think that was like in an interview and someone kind of like framed it that way. Or like, I don't think I ever felt that way. I think maybe like every day of my life, someone pointing out that I wear something probably like got to me a little. But like, should I bring the necktie back? Dude,
you want to talk about like a merch item for tour? I saw those European dates, man. Forget about it. You're also it's a very interesting sort of like, and I feel like it gets lost because you've sold so many records and you've done so many things, but also as a songwriter, you've also given away massive songs. And I've never heard you talk about The Breakaway that somehow winds up with Kelly Clarkson. And not only just, it's not like, because that happens sometimes, it rarely becomes the lead single and the name of the album for the other artists.
Oh my
you know
gosh,
what I mean?
Isn't that crazy?
But is that a song you remember writing and working on? And
yeah, Breakaway was a song that I worked on and co-wrote for my first album, Let Go. And I just didn't like it. It's like a ballad. And I was just like, feels like a church song. Like, felt like I was just like not there. But it went to Kelly Clarkson and I'm pretty sure it went #1. And she's an incredibly strong, beautiful voice with insane range. And she took that song to the next level and fucking, oops. Oh yeah, I'm allowed to say that. And Kelly Clarkson fucking owned it. And yeah, so that was cool. So on my last tour, I actually performed that, added that song into my set list.
Oh, that's amazing.
For the first time.
Have you ever done it with Kelly?
No.
Really?
But that would be fun.
She's got a talk show now. She sings with people.
Yeah, she does.
Put it out there.
It's really cool. I love seeing that. Like, she's done a lot with her career.